thousands of years, man believed he was alone in the cosmos.
We've always made heaven an almost infinite distance from Earth.
Yet man was determined to push back the frontiers of his experience.
When you're out a 250,000 miles away, it's almost like you're no longer part of it. You're standing back and watching the world go by.
And now we stand on the edge of eternity, confronting the wonder and the danger that lies in space.
Beyond what is known lies an unexplored world of shadows and phantoms. A land that knows no limits of time or space. From the dawn of discovery to the nightfall of catastrophe. Journey through a universe of the unexplained, the unforeseen, the unbelievable. A place beyond reality where no question will go unanswered. A place where myth and legend are law, superstition a science.
It's time for our journey to begin. Our destiny has brought us to the threshold. Our dreams will help us to cross it. Space, the last uncharted world. Knowledge surrounds these library walls, and with these instruments, that knowledge can be ours. In 1903, while Wilbur and Orville Wright were laying the foundation for aviation, writers and filmmakers were looking well beyond earthly travel. Those futurists saw our inevitable journey to the stars as a natural step in man's evolution. These early films were an amusing glimpse into a fantastic and imaginary world. But it was not these celluloid voyages that first began our conquest of space. It was something far more sinister. In the early 1930s, Germany first experimented with sophisticated ways of delivering explosives to their targets without a pilot's guidance. They developed rockets with internal controls to rain death upon England, hundreds of miles away.
Hitler and Albert Speer were looking for missiles that could deliver warheads against Allied targets. And that was what the Nazis were primarily concerned with, was fighting a war.
In spite of terrible damage, the war ended before these experiments could be perfected. However, the heated conflict of the Second World War soon cooled off into a competitive struggle between the United States and Russia, and each side sought to acquire the rocket technology and scientists produced by Nazi Germany. German scientist Werner von Braun is considered to be the architect of America's space program. Von Braun and his team took the technology from the German V-2 rocket, which had been created for destruction, and applied it to the development of the chariots that would take man to new worlds. On October 4th, 1957, the space race began in earnest. On that day, the Soviet Union launched Sputnik 1, the world's first satellite. Reaction was immediate, a mixture of wonder and concern.
They came from out of nowhere and put up Sputnik, and the world was astonished, was frightened, was surprised, and was looking for the United States of America for an answer.
The United States did answer, but unfortunately their space program got off to a rocky start. Because of these failures, the Soviets always seemed to be one or even two steps ahead of the United States. And on April 12, 1961, Yuri Gagarin became the first man to orbit the Earth, and it seemed the United States would never catch up. The Soviets were justly proud of their accomplishments. But less than 1 month later, in a suborbital flight, Alan Shepard became the first American in space. It was this flight that inspired President John Kennedy to commit the resources of his nation to putting a man up on the moon by the end of the decade.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills.
America moved forward. Mercury, Gemini, and then Apollo.
We were serious about going higher, farther, and faster, and coming back. We know it's a high-risk environment. We're prepared for high risk. We enjoy doing this exciting stuff on the leading edge of technology.
In July of 1969, President Kennedy's dream was realized. Man walked on the moon. Mission after mission explored this barren land, and closer to home, the colonization of space became a possibility. Projects like Skylab and the Space Shuttle were developed in the 70s to create a working environment in space. In a symbolic flight in 1975, America and the Soviet Union met in the heavens, cooperating for the first time in the Apollo-Soyuz mission. But while both of these nations' space programs were marked by great success, they were also scarred by tragedy as well. On January 27, 1967, astronauts Gus Grissom, Edward White, and Roger Chaffee were training for their first Apollo mission when a spark set off a horrible fire that swiftly snuffed out their lives.
Those 3 lives, the lives of Gus Grissom, Ed White, and Roger Chaffee, probably contributed more to our success in the Apollo program, of landing on the moon and bringing man home safely to Earth, than any other one thing or anybody else in the entire space program. What came out of that fire was almost a complete rebuilding and remolding of the entire Apollo program, from the hardware to the techniques of our training to our operational procedures. And I think it forced us individually to stop back and look at what we were trying to do.
Even after successful launches to the moon, troubles remained. In April 1970, over 200,000 miles away from Earth, an explosion crippled the Apollo 13 spaceship. Through amazing ingenuity and very good luck, tragedy was averted. Barely.
Apollo 13, probably more than anyone will ever realize today, was a flight in which we came closer than I ever want to come again to losing 3 human beings, actually losing them in space. And Apollo 13 probably produced the greatest level of cooperation between industry, the educational institutions, and government in this country than has ever been seen and perhaps ever will be seen again.
Perhaps the most searing image of the risks of space travel occurred on January 28, 1986, when the world witnessed the explosion of a dream and the deaths of 7 brave men and women. The Space Shuttle Challenger fell victim to a combination of bad weather, bad equipment, and worse luck. In spite of these tragedies, perhaps because of them, man continues to explore the heavens.
There's never been an astronaut who got on a spacecraft, whether it was Mercury, Apollo, or even Shuttle, who didn't fully understand the risk involved and who wasn't willing to take them.
Triumph as well as tragedy have always been part of man's exploration of the unknown. So too is confronting unexplained phenomena. NASA and those who pioneered the space program chose to convey to the world an image of ultimate confidence. Men with the right stuff were certainly above picking lucky numbers to accompany the names of their spacecrafts. Or were they? Superstition can survive in any environment. Every one of the first Mercury spacecraft had a 7 after its name. Though engineers and astronauts are among the most pragmatic men on Earth, apparently they felt a little luck was to be encouraged. One of the more engaging facets of our voyages into space is the way in which our humanity and spirit continues to go along for the ride. After the tragedy of Apollo 1, it is easy to see why the next manned flight number was a lucky 7. Ironically, there were those at NASA who argued against numbering a mission 13. They were overruled, with almost tragic results. But as we can see, there have been many flights, many numbers, and a lucky 7, while it may help, is no substitute for good planning and simple bravery. Decades of space exploration have resulted in widely publicized stories of great scientific discoveries. There is speculation that some reports have been purposely held back from the public. These tales include man's first encounter with alien beings. Since man first began exploring space, these rumors about encounters with extraterrestrial life have persisted. Is it possible that these meetings have occurred? Or is it just the overactive imaginations of a few tabloid editors?
That's a characteristic of exploration. In fact, if you go back even to the days of the sailing ships, we'd see mermaids. And as far as sightings of aliens in space, there's a vast literature of this published. There's a worldwide story about Apollo 11, our first moon landing, which I guess must not have been dramatic enough for some people, that there were alien spaceships lined up along a crater when the Apollo ship landed.
Fueling this speculation have been odd photographs taken by the astronauts, unexplained lights floating in space. And while astronauts stoutly maintain that they have never seen anything resembling alien life, it's not, it seems, for lack of trying.
I'd love to have seen a UFO, or I'd love to have seen and come back and be able to say something about some new extraterrestrial life. But unfortunately, I can't. I don't know anyone who can at this point in time. I will admit, when we were on the surface of the moon driving that lunar rover around, every time we came across a set of tracks, we did stop and take a good look at them and make sure they were ours and not somebody else's.
We haven't encountered otherworldly voyages yet. Though most astronauts immediately dismiss these rumors of past meetings, they are not as swift in ruling out the possibilities.
It's a certainty that life is out there. And I think not only is it out there, but it will be very recognizable. It will be very similar to life forms as we know them.
Certainly there has to be other life out there in outer space. Statistically, mathematically, I think you can prove it over and over again. Why should we be so egotistic to believe that life is created here on Earth and nowhere else?
Bigger, faster, smarter. Words that describe the hardware man will need to explore space into the next century. This technology is in various stages of development. Some are on the drawing board, others in full-scale operation. First launched in May of 1981, the Space Shuttle is a design created for the future, the first step in the colonization of space.
We have ignition. We have ignition of the solid rocket boosters and liftoff. Liftoff of America's Space Shuttle, and the Space Shuttle has cleared the tower.
The shuttle has more capabilities than simply a way in and out of space. Here's a huge laboratory that did an immensely good job as not only a transportation system, but also a laboratory in space.
Working in an area free of the boundaries of gravity gives scientists the opportunity to perform and create new experiments that have a multitude of applications. And beyond the flights of the Space Shuttle, the next goal is a voyage to the red planet of Mars.
If we want to go to Mars, we better have someone at least know what it's like to be in space for 3 years. That's a long time.
I think we're going to see colonization one day of Mars. I think we're going to see a civilization grow up and build up on Mars. I think it's going to be a natural evolution of mankind on this Earth.
I think the possibility that the United States and the Soviet Union will work together going to Mars is increasingly likely, just because the endeavor will be so expensive. I think it was in Ray Bradbury's Martian Chronicles, the line of "the first Martians are us." I think that the first man or woman to set foot on the planet Mars is already living today.
But why stop there? Some believe that man's journey into space is only limited by his imagination.
I would say let's don't settle Mars. Let's go out and see what's on some of the moons of Jupiter or something like that. So I believe we should keep the pace up, explore every part of the solar system, every part of the universe, and build the best spaceships and flying vehicles.
At present, we're well past Saturn through the proxy eyes and ears of Voyager, America's unmanned space probe, traveling millions of miles to the farthest reaches of our solar system. But man's hopes for the near future of space travel are propelled by the space station, a vehicle America has pledged to have in orbit in the next 15 years. The United States space program is committed to having a permanent station in orbit by the end of the 20th century. It will have up to 8 astronauts, and it will be self-sufficient in every way. The orbiting space station will hover 300 miles over the Earth and will offer man the opportunity to view the universe as never before. In order to see what lies ahead in this near future, we must journey there. Well, ready?
One moment. I'm having trouble locking into the destination coordinates. There. I think I've got it. The portal is set for September 2003. Your destination is the main deck of the laboratory module aboard Spacelab 1. This facility has been in geostationary orbit for 2 years, 7 weeks, and 5 days.
Do I need any special equipment?
No. Oh, but my circuit shows some thermal malfunction. It might be a little cold.
Thank you. Back in no time. "300 miles above the Earth, it is eternal night. But here, humanity has brought light and life to this void. Our future may begin within these walls. If man is ever to learn to live and work in space, these are the first steps he will have to take. This low-gravity environment is perfectly suited for the creation of new technologies, new sciences. In this station, men and women can live and work together to consolidate our now tentative foothold in space, bringing the life the Earth contains into a new world. Sights and experiences that once would have been unthinkable are here, a part of everyday life. This is a window into a landscape that has infinite dimension, infinite opportunity. Space is far from empty. It is full of promise. And in the future, when man looks at the stars, some will glitter with the light of his accomplishment. For a few of these stars will be space stations like these, carrying his dreams through the heavens. How long have I been gone?
Only an hour. How was your journey?
Oh, fascinating. It's obvious that the technology we need to continue our journey into space is already within our grasp. Some of that technology is already enriching our lives in ways we're not even aware of. Man has been exploring space for over 30 years, and some of the technology developed for these voyages has become an integral part of our lives. We have come a long way in a very short time, and experts are unanimous on one thing. We have only just begun our journey.
I believe that going into space is a major event in human evolution, in the evolution of planet Earth. Probably as significant as the first sea creatures crawling out on the land.
We need to get into space reliably and low cost, and that'll open up space to all these other things. Then I can start romanticizing about trips to the planets.
Going to places like the Moon and eventually Mars, I think, are going to unlock some of the secrets, some of the answers that mankind has been looking for eons and eons of years. We know so little about ourselves and where we came from. I don't expect all of that to be answered simply by a couple of people going on through space in a spacecraft. But inch by inch, generation by generation, I think we'll begin to understand ourselves a little bit better, know a little bit more about ourselves, and in essence, allow ourselves to be more part of our own environment, and our environment is space.
Time is all that stands between us and the inevitable conquest of space. To understand the need for exploration, we must look no further than our own history. For the passion that led Columbus and Magellan to discover new worlds is the spirit that lives within all of us. Space, a journey that will never end. It is our destiny.
Secrets and Mysteries presents information based in part on theories and opinions, some of which are controversial. The producer's purpose is not to validate any side of an issue, but through the use of actualities and dramatic recreation, relate a possible answer, but not the only answer, to this material.